Welcome to Automation Unscripted, an educational, frank and fun podcast dedicated to the art of business process automation. Automation Unscripted is brought to you by Virtual Operations, a leading consultancy in digital transformation, with more than a decade's experience working with organizations to help them grow their return on investment in automation. In this edition, your hosts, Daniel Andrews and Kieran Gilmurray, are exploring the evolving role of AI within automation solutions. As well as discussing the reasons behind the growing buzz around AI, they will also be looking at its impact on processes across various industries and delving into case studies showcasing the combined use of AI with RPA.
Welcome back to the Automation Unscripted podcast. Well, this one is, I guess, a little bit scripted. So the Automation Scripted / Unscripted. Today, we're going to talk about how organizations need to utilize both AI and RPA in order to scale their automation program effectively. Ever since ChatGPT was introduced to the public, I think there's been an absolutely crazy buzz around AI, and we've noticed it over the last, since it happened, because AI has been around in this industry for a long time, but it's really come to the forefront, and we've noticed it with our own clients, the amount of push and momentum that's surrounding it. So that's what we're going to dig into today. I have Kieran again joining, who I would consider an expert in this area. So Kieran, why don't you kick us off, and we'll start with defining what RPA is and then what AI is.
Good to meet everyone again, and great to be on the second podcast here. Mine's a very simple definition. So RPA, robotic process automation, for me is very much the clickety-click. So what you can do is record what people are doing on a screen, and instead of a human, real-life person clicking on the buttons on the keyboard, the robot, digital worker, whatever you want to call it, has recorded those keystrokes and plays them back. That's different, though, from intelligent automation, which uses artificial intelligence. Let's break that down a little bit more. Where one is the clickety-click, now we're moving across to the thinkety-think. So for example, if we look at OCR, optical character recognition, someone can send in a document or present a document to an image program. That image program can look at that document using AI technology, OCR technology. It can then take apart that image and then take the data that's in it and move that data somewhere else. The classic example, Dan, is in comes an invoice in an email, in a PDF or whatever format. The RPA, clickety-click, goes in and opens up the email, having monitored the queue, takes the attachment, moves that attachment, be it a purchase order, an invoice, onto the shared drive. OCR with AI reads the document, strips out all of the most pertinent, relevant data, invoice date, total, supplier details, and everything else, passes that data usually back to robotic process automation. It then updates other systems like a finance system, a CRM system, or something else. We need both, because as humans, we often do the clickety-click and the thinkety-think. RPA was never going to be enough to transform a business. We need almost a replica of us as humans, hence why you need to combine the two technologies together to allow you to do a lot of end-to-end automation across tasks and processes and entire business functions.
Yeah, and that's a good example. That brings me back to one of my first ever projects that I was on was handwritten invoices, or there was a certain handwriting within these invoices, and we literally had to stop the process because we didn't have the OCR technology it was about then, couldn't read the type of handwriting that we were talking about. So we had to actually get people to manually do it. So you can see even a difference in a decade. Now, 100% that I don't know if it is done with that client, but I'm sure it has been. But back then it was really a blocker. And now with the AI capabilities, you can breeze past that process. If you've got any analogies for everyone, I know everyone's got their own analogies for AI and RPA. The one I like is head chef compared to all his kitchen stuff. The head chef's the one that does all the learning, all the improving, all the tasting, seeing the textures, just like, say, AI would. And then you've got the kitchen assistants who actually do all the chopping, all the preparing. So, and that would be then compared to RPA. So that would be my one. I'm sure you've got many more than that.
I do, but I really like that one. Not only the fact that you've now made me hungry at this time of night, but it really defines the difference, doesn't it? It's the doing. And with respect to, the assistants, the head chef is doing the thinking, doing the analyzing, learning over a period of time, putting different and better concoctions together, and then handing over that decision making or that insight to the rest of the business. Again, one cannot function without the other, Dan. That goes back to what I was saying, the thinkity think, the clickety click. You need both. It is interesting, though, the example that we've talked a moment ago about, which is, even the OCR of the scanning of invoices. I sometimes wonder if we're a little bit harsh on technology, be it RPA or AI. So, for example, if I walked into you as a business leader and you had 100 people in the room reading that handwriting and then taking that handwriting and typing it into a computer and moving it onto a computer screen, they would make mistakes, without a doubt. Even today, you do 100, it's okay. You do 1,000, you will make mistakes, copying, pasting, typing. When we get technology, I very often say, well, what do you mean the AI can't do it 100 times out of 100? That's ridiculous. I'm not buying your technology. So I sometimes wonder, despite our examples, despite the technology, despite our human frailties, we put a tremendous amount on the head chef to actually make everything work in the kitchen, whereas we as humans drop plates, smash dishes, and maybe add the wrong ingredient very, very often. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, 100% agreed. I mean, back to my example, I was talking about some of those invoices, and we did trial a couple tools, but some of the invoices I couldn't read. I was going, I don't know what that says. So it's very unlikely that an AI tool is going to pick that up and then be able to work with it.
You say that, Dan, but now generative AI is out there. I thought if you put the word generative AI after everything, then everything magically worked. And for folks who can't see me, I'm very much tongue-in-cheek when I'm saying that.
There might be even scenarios where the person who wrote the invoice doesn't know what they were trying to write. Maybe
they don't want
impossible circumstances. That leads me on to the next point. So I talked about it a second ago, but market sentiment. I wanted to get your view on how the market sentiment has changed in the last 12 to 24 months, and even when ChatGPT came about. How have you seen that change in your clients, and how have you seen the market shift, and has it changed the way you work?
Hell yeah, in every answer. And I love what you were saying earlier on, Dan, about AI and its recency. AI is an 80-year-old overnight success story. It's one of those things you cannot, as you said earlier on, ignore the word ChatGPT. It's almost got Google-esque. Now Google is used for searching. It's not just a company or anything else. Since November 2022, the world has exploded. If you look back on that technology, just using OpenAI as an example, and please, folks, there's more examples, Claude, Bing, Bard, Gemini, whatever we're calling them now, all great new engines like ChatGPT and a host of other applications that you can use that have Gen AI in them that allow you to do more. And I'll come to those in a second, because you asked me, how has my work changed? So the Gen AI technology has grown quicker than any other technology in the world, on the basis that they quote a figure, there was 100 million testers, users, whatever you want to call, of Gen AI within 5 days. That's unprecedented. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, none of them have had that. And you sort of go, well, look, why is this happening? And these are the questions that obviously my audiences are asking. When I talk about my audience, I'm talking about CEOs, heads of HR who are coming into this, and heads of marketing and sales in particular, and others are now following along behind. Why are they excited? Well, now, Dan, you can have AI technology helping you, making decisions, creating new content. And we're talking about new content. I can do something and say, write me a haiku, write me a recipe, as we were talking about chefs earlier on, they can use these 4 ingredients. Write me a retention model that examines my insurance book of business and tell me out of 100% per customer who's liable to stay or not. Magic like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having an army of really clever interns who can answer lots of questions. And you're going, well, why is that exciting? And you're sort of going there, well, let's walk through this in a moment. I ran a data science team for 13 years. I had, oddly enough, 13 people in that data science team. There must be some magic number there. And we built retention models for insurance brokers and credit models and debt models and upsell models and simulation models that told you how many people you needed in your contact center at a particular time of day. The insight that you can get by putting AI analysis at processes, at business functions, at customers, at prospects, it's just when you have AI plus a brilliant person working together, the decisions that you can make and the answers that you can get are extraordinary. But to do that cost the business. Now, back in the day, 15 years ago, a minimum of £1 million a year, about $1.3 million.
Nice and cheap.
Nice and cheap, but it made money. That business went from 30 million to 85 million in a couple of years. If only I saw that, that would be gorgeous. Dan, I took a sample of insurance data 3 weeks ago. I copied it and anonymized it into a spreadsheet. And that's important because these applications are risky when it comes to presenting data and making it public. And there's lots of worries about security and everything else we'll get to talk about in a moment. For $20 a month, and I didn't even need to pay it, Dan, but for $20 a month, I added on a GPT into ChatGPT, and I got the same answers out that I did spending £1 million a year for $20. Wow. That's kind of exciting. So now, at next to no cost, I have an army working with me that can give me amazing answers. And we talk about how it's adjusted my day. Well, apart from the fact people now book me for speaking events as far away as Saudi Arabia, notice I'm not pronouncing the city that I was in earlier on, all the way to Dublin and Belfast and back in Malaysia, you name it. I on my desktop used to have, obviously, Office applications, all the productivity tools, and then you would have Google. I haven't opened up Google in about 14 months. Now I have Claude, I have ChatGPT, I have Grammarly infused with Gen AI, Notion, and. I have all these productivity tools, and I am a minimum. Now I'm an operational expert, so I refine everything that I do. I put systems in place. I optimize my time, but I am 40% more productive. The quality of my work has gone up 30, 40% as well. And now when I'm trying to think of new ideas, new ways to work or present articles, content, papers, ideas to my clients, I'm going in and asking the ChatGPT and the Claude AI, and I use both tools for ideas and suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, even in what you just said, you raised two examples that either my team use or I personally use. The first one was with coding, scripting, writing scripts. I get my team to check their code regularly to write the base foundation of what they're looking to achieve, SQL, whatever it might be. They can validate it. They can, and probably I asked them the other day, 60% easier. Just having a validator, having a checker, they don't need each other to. That was one. And then I think the other one you said is how much more productive you've been. They said when the internet came in that you have all the information at your fingertips. You're probably fingertips and then 10 meters away, right? Because you've still got to do all the research, now you genuinely have it at your fingertips. You just write a prompt or a question and everything's there. One of the biggest hurdles I have is with the application teams, giving or putting an AI model where sensitive data may be. How do we get around that hurdle? So most of the time I'm actually spending is not in utilizing the AI tool. It's convincing everyone around the AI tool, and maybe even myself a little bit, that this is the right area to go down. Because there's a lot to learn and think about when you're looking at those risks.
Yeah, I think people assume, don't they, Dan, that they're all taken care of. So I did a poll not that long ago on LinkedIn and said, what do you think of ethics? And nobody really replied. Now, I normally get thousands and thousands of hits because I have a big audience. So I wrote to some people and went, well, why not? Why did you not engage with the article, the content, the research, the polls? And went, well, it's sort of boring. Okay. I thought my content was better. Feedback, great. But they said it was the topic, thank goodness. Yeah. And then they said, look, the answer was as boring as a topic, and we assume it's being taken care of. And both those are dangerous things, because with any great technology comes great risk. And it's not that these risks didn't exist before, because you and I know when the internet came out, all of a sudden criminals were everywhere. It was in the press. No, they were just using the technology to do the same thing in a different way they've done for 500 years. Yeah. But as you're saying, it is a risk when you start to feed your data into these systems and models, because the vendors aren't saying where they're originally getting their data from. So are we to assume that it's really well researched, is really high quality? Because if they're getting stuff off the internet, let's be honest, it sometimes or quite often isn't the best content in the world. What if someone has deliberately put out open source code? Because these models have used open source code, which has exposed some other people's personal details. But what if they're scraping data to teach you how to code, to give you new SQL work, but actually you've copied a SQL injection because someone has tried to put a poison pill into the generative AI model that they can then exploit at a later date because you have put that code having validated into your business. Now, all these things, of course, are practical, probably real, and probably hypothetical, and everywhere in between. So the key bit is, well, this is not new. Every technology, or even walking out the door, comes with risk. You know, it's taken airlines 150 years to put more processes in every single day to refine and refine and refine. We do need to be conscious of the risk. We do need to be responsible. So what I would be doing is encouraging firms to educate their workforce on how to use these tools, because I see too many at the moment turning the tools off. Now what we've got, and there was a piece of research out a couple of weeks ago between Microsoft and one of the universities in Ireland, who said shadow AI, not shadow IT, shadow AI is a massive thing. And what is happening there is people are going, well, IT have turned it off, but darn, a bit like you and I, Dan, these tools are amazing. What they allow us to do is fantastic. So now I'm copying across data into my mobile phone or my tablet, and I'm working out getting ways around this. I know one government body who was putting in people's CVs, exit letters, writing to MPs, all into ChatGPT without turning off the toggle on the left that says, please don't record this. And even doing that, ChatGPT may not turn your data into the wider corpus to teach it, but it will keep it for 30 days. And they didn't mean anything. Of course, that whole department is now shut down from an IP perspective, which for me is a little bit of, actually, that's too draconian, because these tools are quality, amazing productivity, and everything else in between tools that can really drive business and performance. But you need to work with people. You need to educate them right from the top all the way down to an organization and teach them how to use them responsibly. And I think if we do that with any technology at all, people respect it and people abide by what I would describe as good guidance and good rules to allow responsible AI to flourish inside and outside of a business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you've just stumbled across what our podcast number 3 might be. The hidden dangers of AI, what to watch out for, and how to properly utilize them in a responsible manner. Because, I mean, the example you just gave of a governing body there is fairly terrifying, but I'm sure it's happening absolutely everywhere. It won't just be siloed to the one organization you've mentioned, which is, terrifying, but as well fascinating and interesting. This really is a buzz topic, and it has its reasons, right? It is interesting, it is exciting. So why don't we look at then some case studies and I wanted to sort of look at case studies not involving one or the other, but case studies involving both. And you sort of talked about it at the start. One of the ones I've been using for years, and this will give you an idea of how long AI has been, was Unilever, to do their recruitment process. And this is going back to 2021, I think. And they probably get in 10,000 applications for a job where they're looking to give away 500 jobs. So they utilized RPA to do all the intake, all the documentation, all the front end stuff to set the interviews with the recipients or the ones that passed based on structured rules. And then they actually used AI. I can't remember what the tool was called, but the interview itself was done on video with 10 preset questions. So they just held the video in front of them, and obviously it's pretty weird for someone being interviewed in that way. But what the tool actually did is it took their answers, took their confidence levels, took on hundreds of data points, and Unilever could pick which ones they were really looking for, right? Whether it was confidence, whether it was X, Y, and Z. But the main thing is it's looking at emotions and it's looking at qualifications at the same time. It was then able to whittle down from, say, 10,000 applicants to really a very manageable number that then the second interviews could take place, which I thought was fascinating. I mean, I would hate to do an interview via video, but the case study, if you're Unilever, is almost impossible to argue with. If you were to say, let's do this over video, we'll do 10,000 interviews, you don't have to spend X, we can use this AI tool. I know it's not ideal, you lose that human element, but from a business case, there's no argument with that. That's just...
I'm going to argue with it. I'll argue with it momentarily. So to your point, look, everybody's different. I know the quality of your work, and I know it's exceptional. And I can testify that having known you over numbers of years and watched the work that VOps have delivered. And you've just said it straight away. You might never have got a job with VOps if they'd have made you go on video, because all of a sudden, that's very different to get natural in front of video now, even after years of COVID and hybrid working and whatever else. You go into a meeting and people have their cameras off. Now, ignore the home shoppers or the showerers or whatever other people are doing that shouldn't be doing. But people are introverts, people are extroverts, people maybe don't like their image and so on. So all of a sudden, actually, now I've inadvertently turned off a lot of the audience and my behavior is adjusted. So my pitch, my pace, my tone, my confidence is going to be affected. Now, if the job is going to be in front of camera like this all the time, then hell yeah, I want to discriminate in the nicest possible sense and go with non-camera shy people who can do really, really well. So it really depends on the job. When you look at some of the models that have been determined in the past, particularly questions, well, you recognize the phrase, not mine, I'm repeating something that I've read lots of times. The old software developer example, software developers wrote a system that said what a really good software developers looked like. Guess what? Until a period of time ago, when arguably still the same, more software developers were white. So if then I'm writing the criteria and I'm looking around the room to go, what does a really good software developer look like? I'm going to put in those criteria. Guess what? People from minorities, people who identify as females or anything other than male are not going to get captured. So you have to be really careful that you do not inadvertently, and nobody goes out to do this that I'm aware of, build bias into the selection processes, into the HR systems that you're getting. I think, and I agree with the business case, 10,000 down and using technology, because my son is now working for a large consulting practice. They had a 5 or 6 step process, which is online exams, online interviews, in-person interviews, psychometric tests. All these things made sense and he enjoyed them. He is very, very digital. So all this became natural to him, but it might not be natural to a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
And you could be losing out on great candidates. So I've total empathy with the candidate and I've total empathy with the firm here. I think you need to build a process that definitely uses great technology that helps you in the process, because now you will get 10,000 people because technology has opened up the world of applicants, never mind anything else. And I mean the physical world. But you also have to go back to what we were saying a moment ago, Dan. Really judge, am I actually creating the environment to select the person or persons in a way that they're going to have to deliver on a day-to-day basis? So if I have to be in camera every day, fantastic. If I have to meet people face to face, maybe I want to change my interview process. Am I sure that my AI or systems aren't being biased? Do I have a human in the loop here who can just check and validate some of the outputs are happening? Because there's a great study numbers of years ago when AI was used to assess teachers in the state in the US, and all of a sudden a whole lot of teachers got sacked. And they were brilliant teachers. What they discovered later on was, of course, the AI was wrong. Or again, when we place too much faith in computer systems, and the post office scandal in the UK is a great example, where everybody went, but the computer cannot be wrong. And over 900 people were convicted of fraud against the UK post office, multiple put in prison, numbers very tragically and sadly became depressed, split up in relationships, were shunned by the local community, lots went to prison, and numbers committed suicide. And by God, the computer was wrong. So again, we just need to get excited by all the technology, and we need to think through the consequences. and we need to validate what's actually going to happen if and when things go wrong. Dynamite was invented to clear roads to help people travel. Look what happened to that. AI is being promoted by all these companies and us as a productivity and a quality tool. But for example, it can be very much used in a nefarious way. So I'm doing a bit of work with a UK charity, and what people are doing in gangs in the UK, you and I will never think of this, Dan, but to keep people selling drugs in particular areas, they are taking images of those individuals, family members, they are putting them on pornographic models, and they are threatening to send this to people's telephone books and contacts and whatever else. And you go, oh my God, that's crazy. And it is. And I would never have thought of that till I'm working with the charity. But when you think about it, actually, that technology started a deep fake to help movie people, to help production studios and whatever else. So everything that can be used for good potentially could be used for bad. We just need to go back to responsible uses, thinking ahead of what might go wrong, preparing for it now so that we end up with the best use of AI, the best candidate and the best business that we can possibly have.
Today we talked about how the industry is looking to utilize both RPA and AI in parallel as opposed to seeing them as separate technologies. We looked at the definitions of RPA and AI, some market sentiment, and how that's changed over the last 12 months since the introduction of ChatGPT. We looked how it's changed our lives personally, both myself and Kieran, and then we looked at some case studies of how those two technologies are working together. A lot of the time people use case studies of just the one and then try and bundle them together, but these were really case studies where the two are working in tandem. And next week we're going to be talking about some of the pitfalls and areas of risk associated with AI and how you can help manage those. Looking forward to chatting next week. Thanks for your time today, Kieran. Thanks for listening, everyone, and talk to you next week.